well as the coordinator for the New Hampshire chapter of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and I'm also a certified prevention specialist. I really want to start by extending a special thank you to the New Hampshire Drug-Free Community Coalitions for hosting this event and for their amazing partnership and passion for creating a unified prevention message throughout our state. I would also like to thank our sponsors, Nashua Prevention Coalition, Sam New Hampshire, and Katie for making this event possible. Thank you to our legislators who are here with us today. We know you have extremely busy schedules, and we're very supportive and appreciative of you taking the time to join us for this presentation. Marijuana is often a blind spot for many people, and social media, peers, movies, and TV shows have created even more confusion about the dangers of this drug. The scary truth is that marijuana is addictive and can cause harm to our children and youth and their developing brains. Science shows us that youth marijuana use, especially high-potency THC, is linked to poor mental health outcomes, including anxiety, depression, suicide, and addiction. The work of all the DFC coalitions is data-driven and fact-based. This chart illustrates that marijuana is not a harmless rite of passage, but a risk multiplier to opioid addiction. It's also important to note that every major public health institution agrees that today's high-potency THC is addictive and harmful, including the American Medical Association, National Institutes of Health, and American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, just to name a few. By working across sectors, we can create a uniform message about the dangers of youth marijuana use to help preserve our children's bright and promising futures. At this time, I would like to welcome Celeste Clark, Executive Director of Raymond Coalition for Youth, to introduce our keynote speaker.
Thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us this morning. My name is Celeste Clark. I'm the Executive Director of the Raymond Coalition for Youth, and it's going to be my honor to introduce Dale. I have a little thing I'm going to read for you. But first, I just want to let you know, I've seen him speak at CADCA, which is the Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America in Washington, D.C., and he's absolutely excellent. And so when Michelle called and said, do you know this guy? Do you think we should bring him in? I'm like, yes, how can we get him? So I'm very excited to have him here this morning, and I will read this for you. With over 40 years in law enforcement and a majority of that time working in undercover narcotics, today's speaker brings a unique perspective to the topic of marijuana in America. Dale Quigley, Quig, is currently the Deputy Coordinator of the National Marijuana Initiative, part of the High-Intensity Drug Trafficking Area program in the United States. As a native of Colorado and by virtue of his position in HITDA, he has firsthand knowledge of what is happening in his state and in other states that have legalized marijuana. He strongly believes that the misinformation and the rhetoric about today's marijuana needs to be replaced with facts stemming from valid scientific research. This path will assist individuals and policymakers alike to make informed decisions about marijuana legalization and the consequences that follow it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dale Quigley.
Thank you, Celeste. You read that just the way I wrote it. You made it sound sincere at the same time.
I lived it.
I've been doing that with my career. Perfect. Howdy.
Howdy.
There you go. First rule of thumb, this is an interactive game, okay? Even if you're sitting in the back, you're still a fair target here. So, as Celeste said, my name is Dale Quigley. I'm the Deputy Coordinator for the National Marijuana Initiative, a part of the HITDA program. We'll get into that in just a few minutes. And I got to tell you, I got in here really late last night and had a chance to drive through your community this morning. What a great town, what a great area. You guys are so fortunate. I want to come back here in the fall, so just keep that as a hint. If you're doing something in the fall, I'd like to see the photos. You know, we still have just dry grass, and it's just ugly right now in Denver. So thank you. It was nice to see a little bit of green hanging out there. So what we're going to do today, we're going to take about an hour, and we're going to have a little discussion. And what we're going to talk about, as soon as I turn this back on, oh, you've got it down below where I can't get to it, I bet you. Where's my AD? Why don't you bring it back up on top, because I don't think the signal's reaching. There we go. Actually, I want to bring it all the way back up. There we go. Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about the HITDA program, real briefly about what the NMI is, what we do. The area that I want to spend some time talking about is this. This is the agenda for the things we're going to discuss today. Why these items? Because these are the items that the most commonly come up in conversation. Hey, what about this? What do you know about that? So that's what we're going to talk about. As we get through this here, I'm going to ask for your help. There's going to be a QR code that I'm going to ask you to scan with your phone. It's a survey system. Like any good program, we try to show how many beans we can put in the bucket, how productive we are. It's a way of showing our metrics back to ONDCP. And it's a real easy system. It'll take you about 3 minutes on a cell phone. If you want to add some dialogue or questions or comments in there, it'll take you a minute or two longer. It's real simple. And as we get through this, I'm going to open it up to you guys. We'll do a little Q&A in the back side. All right? So as we get through this, first thing I've learned to put up front, and now a word from our sponsor. This is our website. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to thenmi.org. Those are our social media sites. I'll give you a warning about our social media sites. These are one-way streets. Okay? We're not going to have dialogue going back and forth. There's not going to be twittering and whatever happens on Instagram type of thing for dialogue. Anytime we post something new to our website, it'll push out to our social media. So it's a case that you can look at and go, oh, impaired driving and cannabis. Oh, pediatric poisonings related back to THC toxicity. If it interests you, click it. It'll take you to our website. If not, swipe left and move on to the next cat video. I mean, that's the easiest way to look at it. Okay? So that's what we got. You'll see this one again. Who we are. National Marijuana Initiative is part of the HITDA program. And if you're not familiar with HITDA, it stands for High Intensity Drug Trafficking Areas Program. We've got 33 HITDAs in the United States, and we're one of the very specific initiatives that support these HITDAs. Primarily, the HITDAs that we have look to disrupt and dismantle drug trafficking organizations, bringing drugs into our country and then domestically moving them around. And I'll introduce you to a very fine man right here. It's a good friend of mine, Dale Quigley. He's the Deputy Director of the New England HITDA. Stand up and take a bow. If you don't know Dave, this is a good business card to get and share with. Okay? They do great work in the New England HITDA. He's a good friend. He's a good person to have your back. So that's something I would tell you to take a few moments and meet here. Okay? If you haven't noticed, I'm too old to chase over fences after drug dealers anymore. Okay? I'm going to leave that to you guys, especially when you got great socks on. What we do is about prevention. It's about education. We're not about lobbying. We're not about taking any specific position. What we're trying to do is take a look at the information that's out there. And more importantly, this is what goes to it, providing evidence-based research and findings. And why is this a critical thing? There has been so much misinformation and disinformation about this one particular drug that I really think the average person has no idea where to go to find some good, clean information based in science, based in evidence, based in fact, based in data. Okay? So that's our role. Fact and findings. Vanna. If you understand the messenger, it helps you understand the message. I get no special compensation for doing this. There's no honorariums, okay? I do this because this is my ministry, as Deb and I were talking about. I also explained to Deb that I didn't think after 40 years of being a cop, this was the legacy I was leaving behind for your generation of centurions. My apologies, okay? But we're seeing things happen, and again, if it's based in fact and based in science, that's a great thing. But if it's based in hype and rhetoric, I'm not sure that's the right way to go. Okay? So, get no honorarium. Why do I do this? I've got grandkids. I've seen what this drug has done in my state. I've seen what this drug has done in my own family. Okay? So I have some skin in the game in this thing. The other thing I want to talk about is educating you. We get done today, I hope you're more informed and enlightened consumer of data and information. If something comes up on the screen and you like what you see, the source citation, where it came from, will be in the bottom right-hand corner. Call to action. If you learn something new, share it. If you hear misinformation or disinformation, correct it. But it takes a role on your part to become educated to the issues. Here's the problem, though. Every one of us in here has our own opinion about this particular drug. Mine's based on 40 years of police work. Most of that spending working undercover. Okay? I've seen what it's done to my family. I've seen what it's done to my immediate family. We all have a position on this. The hard thing to do is to step back. 10 years ago, my message was much different than what it is now. Much, much different. And I'm going to do the one thing you are never supposed to do in a public speaking event. I'm going to start with an apology. Because if you think you're going to hear, oh God, 40-year-old cop, demon weed, reefer madness, if you smoke this, you're going to go blind. I have to apologize to you because you're not going to hear that today. What you are going to hear is facts. Where has research taken us? What has the last 10 years of data offered us from Colorado since we made the transition from a medical model to the commercial adult use model? That's what we're going to talk about today. Can data be spun in any direction we want it to go? Oh, come on, guys, you're going to have to talk. I'm not the only one here.
Yes.
Yes, okay. It depends on the motivation of the speaker and what they're trying to get across. People will try and deluge you with data. You have to be cautious about it because obviously the proof is right here, right? This is exactly the proof. Or is it? Or is it? Dave, I'm going to pick on you. Okay? How many sides are there to a story?
2.
What if only one person's talking? What if there's 3 people talking? How many sides are there to a coin? 2. How many agree with 2? How many agree with something else? What do you think?
3.
Why is there 3?
You get the top, bottom, and then you can stand it on the round part. The edge.
Yeah, that's called a side. Yeah, a coin is nothing more than a cylinder that's compressed down. You have heads and tails and you have a side. So it's easy to lock in on something because this is what we've always heard. Okay? Now, since you did so well with that one, what's your first name?
Dave.
Dave? All right, here we go. Now you're thinking, oh God, here comes the setup. How many pipe ends do you see here? If you need help, you can use your fingers.
3.
You see 3. Does everybody agree with Dave? But we have 3. Anyone disagree? Okay. Let's say these 3 pipe ends represent a point that I'm trying to get across. And I'm just showing you these ends of the pipe. It's incumbent on us to reach down a little deeper and see where the pipes really are. Can you count 3 pipes there? No, you can't. So what appears up here may not be at the root of the whole message. You see black and white squiggly lines. Good, you're supposed to. You see gray horizontal squiggly lines. Yeah, you're supposed to. But are the gray squiggly lines really squiggly? Take a look at one side and follow one gray line across to the right. What do you notice? All the lines above and below it are squiggly. But when you put in a straight edge, they're all straight. It's an illusion. It's a pure illusion. And it's not by accident, right? When we look at messaging, we get so influenced by where we came from and who we learned it from and what we know and what we get on social media and how normalized is the issue. And it's hard as the recipient of information to find a balance in this. And you have to understand, if you understand the message and the messenger, you're a better informed person. If you take a look at data and you take the time to read and learn about the data, you're better off in the long run. The magician cannot make the cards dance around in the middle of the air. Okay? That's not a reality. Nor can he make them spontaneously combust in his hands. That's not a reality. There's no magic rabbit that comes out of the hat. But that's what we choose to believe. That's the illusion we're willing to buy into when we go watch a magic show or watch an illusionist do their work. So the question is now, when we talk about legalization here in 2023, what is really this about? Back in the year 2000, we legalized for medical purposes. In the year 2012, we had it on our election to go to commercial adult use. And what we've seen in the last 10 years poses this question. Are we really talking about the legalization of marijuana for adult use? Or are we really talking about the legalization of THC and the commercialization of THC for profit? So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at data from Colorado. It's for the first time that Colorado can actually say, all right, we can look now back 10 years and we have a good understanding of what's going on. And we can start asking these questions. Is this really about legalization or is it about commercialization? First off, legalization, as you guys have already seen because you've gone down the medical path also, it is not a simple issue. It's very complex. It's not as easy as a red, blue, yes, no, right, wrong. When we look at it, it's really a delicate balance. And the sad thing is, it's a complex balance. You have so many promises and promises being made, and this is going to happen if you do this, and this is going to happen if you do that. And the first issue we have to resolve is we're still talking about the legalization of a drug that's still a Schedule I drug at the federal level. That creates some conflict. It also creates polarization. Everybody understand what I mean by a bell curve? If we take a bell curve of 100% of the population, this section on the left, this section on the right, they are die-hard, true and blue to their cause. You are not going to blow them out of that position for anything. It's the rest of us that fall in the middle of the bell curve. And it's that part of the bell curve that either side wants to influence. So what we have to do is we have to balance that out. We have to understand what we're being told and who's telling us and why are they sharing that with us. My mind's made up with facts. Don't confuse me with it, right? I have my own beliefs. I have my own set of information. This is probably the first takeaway I've got for you guys. Has anything good come out of the legalization of marijuana? Yeah, it has. We've got more people asking better questions and demanding better answers. Better answers that are based in science, answers based in facts, answers based in research. That's the call that we need. We need more current, real-time, valid research being done. And the great news is, it's starting to happen. And we're getting some great results out of it. But if we're going to talk about data, we have to understand how to look at data. Data is really nothing more than seeds planted in a garden. We put the seeds in the garden, we watch them for the first year or two, we look at the results and go, what's that mean? Probably nothing. But we watch it to see if it trends. The longer the time evolves and we see that same data set repeating itself over and over and over again, we go from emerging, trending, to sometimes established data. The ultimate goal here is to use the two C words, correlation and cooperation. Those are two words that scare a lot of people. Okay, but we have to go back and have to take a look at this in realistic terms. Look how long it took us to understand fetal alcohol syndrome. Look how long it took us to understand neonatal abstinence syndrome. We look at some of the issues that we hear now emerging about marijuana use, youth, developing brain. These may be issues we're not going to have for decades, or maybe a generation. And a lot of water can go down the pipe in that much time. When we look at data, you have to be objective about it. You got to look at this like a 401k. 1 year data, just because it supports your message, it supports your position, that's not the definitive nail to hang your hat on. Okay, you have to look at it objectively over the long haul to see what the data is showing us. And more importantly, the biggest takeaway we're seeing in the last 10 years is the increase of the potency levels of the products that are out on the market are changing these outcomes. These are potency levels that we've never seen before. We'll touch on that one here in just a few minutes. Part of data is understanding what you're hearing. I used to play soccer and I used to referee it, so yellow cards mean a lot to me because I saw a lot of them in my career. When we take a look at this, we have to understand that changes between small numbers make large percentage changes. So if in your jurisdiction in 2019 you had no homicides, and in 2020 you had one homicide, that's only one person, right? But what happened to your rate? It went up by 100%. And that's the problem that we hear. So when people talk to you just in percentages, you need to understand what is the end value behind that. What's the end value behind the message? Also, without knowing that end value, phrases can take on a unique blend. If I told you that nationwide exposure rate for you fill in the blank is up by 1,000%, 1,000%, my God, dogs and cats are living together, there's fluoride in the water, horrible things are happening, right? Well, what if in the first year the value was 1, and in year 2 the value was 11 at the national rate? This is a large country, but that equates out to 1,000%. I can change the meaning of the message by working with the numbers. That's why if you got the percentages, you need the actual numbers to go with it. Colorado is now available to give you guys a history lesson. What have we seen in the last 10 years? The theory being if it happened there, could it happen here? It's not a guarantee, it's not a definitive, but the thing that we're encouraging states that are looking at going down either the medical trail or the commercial adult use trail is follow the numbers. Follow the science. I mean, that's what we've heard the last few years with COVID, right? Follow the science. So we need to do the same approach here. This is how we started in Colorado. Back in November of 2000, we had our Amendment 20. It was a constitutional amendment, which means that when it passed, the governor could not veto it. It was by a vote of the general population. Only another vote of the general population could have overturned it. What it allowed for is for an individual patient, based on a doctor's recommendation, not a prescription. Somebody tell me why it's not a prescription, by the way? Come on, it's got to be one of you.
Not a registered drug.
Keep going, you're on the right track. What class of drug is it? Schedule 1, which means it has no accepted medical use in the United States, even under a doctor or physician's care, and a high potential for abuse. Doctors cannot prescribe a Schedule 1. That's why it's a recommendation. You pay the money, you get your card, you can go get your product, okay? So what we're looking at, up to 2 ounces. Me having access to 2 ounces of marijuana. Raise your hand if that's a big deal. See, I agree with you. I don't think 2 ounces is a big deal. On paper, you look at one person, 2 ounces, Step back with me. What if this room represents the state of Colorado? And just this half, you guys are my medical card holders. So you can get 2, you can get 2, you get 2, you get 2. It turns into an Oprah show. You get a car, you get a car, you get a car, right? How much product has to be produced to ensure there's ample supply and demand to meet all of your needs? Now remember 6 plants. We'll come back to that one here in just a little bit. A lot, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Oh. By the way, when this thing first passed, it floundered. It laid there for about 9 years. In the course of 9 years, we had less than 5,000 people decide that they were going to go and get a medical marijuana card. It seemed that people were reticent to say, yes, my name is Dale Quigley. I live at 1234 Main Street. This is my home address. This is where I'll be growing my marijuana. This is where I'll be keeping my marijuana. This is where I'll be smoking my marijuana. They didn't want to share that information with government. Go figure. The other byproduct it had was in my neck of the woods in the criminal justice field. You give, Lieutenant, anyone higher than ranking you? Any of you guys a captain, major, commander? What are you?
Captain.
Dave, man, I keep coming back to you. You shouldn't have worn those socks. One of the best jobs in the business. What happens when we give cops at the state and local level a law that A, they don't understand, B, it's worded very vaguely and it's confusing? How hard do we enforce it?
We don't.
We don't. And that's exactly what happened. The local cops didn't know what to do. We all took a hands-off position. The attorneys, the state attorneys and the district attorneys, they didn't want to prosecute it. Why? They didn't understand it either. A lot of the magistrates didn't understand it either. We'd seize a load of marijuana and the court would order us to give the marijuana back. Now the law allows us to take marijuana, allows us to hold on to marijuana as its evidence. But if I take marijuana and I give it back to the defendant Kelly, what have I just done? It's called distribution. And it was like, oh, we didn't think about that. There were so many, oh gee, we hadn't thought about that moments that came up, and that was just one of the other ones that came up. All right, so now we got state and local guys pretty much taking a hands-off approach. This laid for 9 years. Then our friends at the Department of Justice released what was called the Ogden Memo, and this was guidance to federal prosecutors and federal attorneys. And it had all the right verbiage you would expect to see from the Beltway, right? Yes, we understand marijuana is illegal. Yes, we understand it's a dangerous drug. Yes, we understand that organized crimes and gangs use it to make a lot of money. It had all the right verbiage until you got to page 2. But if you're looking at focusing federal resources on somebody that's in compliance with state and local law, we're not going to do it. And you have to understand, remember the time, we're talking about 2009. The whole conversation about commercial adult use or recreational use wasn't even on the books yet. Wasn't even on the optics were, is this was about our rights as citizens. What we should be able to do under the law. This was the optics that was at the time. Law enforcement should not be going after grandma coming out of chemotherapy and smoking a joint because she's nauseated. Which, by the way, we don't do that. Never did. Okay? The other optics out there, government shouldn't be telling us what we can do. We're grown adults, we can make our own decisions. Big Brother should not be interfering with our lives. This was the optics at the time. But what happened was really a significant change in how data was looked at and the change in behavior after that. After the Ogden Memo came out in Colorado, the floodgates opened. We had less than 5,000 people that had applications and actually had cards. We jumped that up to over 20,000 applications. Dispensaries, oh, they were popping up like mushrooms in the grass after good rain. To the point, by the time we get to 2009, we've got 38,000 applications out there, Dispensaries have gone through the roof. What have they done? They saturated a small market. What happens to a product's value when you saturate the product? Yeah, you're right, it goes right down the tubes, and that's exactly what happened. We had a lot of these businesses could not sustain. And when I say sustain, if I'm going to have a functional business, I have to have a constant supply of inventory, which means in the perfect world, I've got vertical integration. I grow it, I harvest it, I manufacture, produce, I sell it. It all comes from one place. I'm not relying on you, I'm not relying on you, not relying on you to bring me product. Okay? The vertical integration is what killed a lot of these. What we saw during this time, this was really the first time we saw commercial marijuana coming into our state. It was the large businesses buying up all the little ones, or waiting for Dave's market to go out, wait for your dispensary to go out, and they come in and buy it up. Okay? So this was the huge change that we saw as a result of this 2009-2010 mark. Flash forward. We're now to the 2012 election. We've got medical. This was the push. It took us 12 years to get there. This was the push to go to commercial adult use, also known as recreational. Notice the wording. It was almost identical. Okay, instead of 2 ounces of product, you get 1, you get 6 plants. Okay, and there were some provisions in there for jobs and some industries that were there. Okay, changes in this, May of 21, our governor changed that now to 2 ounces. So on the medical side and on the commercial adult use side, you can go and get 2 ounces. The difference is this. When I go over here to the medical side, I can get my 2 ounces. The transaction is tracked because you have a medical marijuana card. And you pay about 2% tax, 2.9. I walk to the other side of the room or the building next door, and I'm buying from the commercial adult use side. I'm still buying 2 ounces. It's not a tracked inventory sale, but I'm paying up 30% in tax. That's before even state and local stuff gets tacked into it. So really, the medical marijuana card kind of became the buy one, get one free card in terms of taxations. We were curious, what's going to happen with the folks with medical marijuana cards? Now all you have to do is be of age and walk in and put money on the counter. We thought they would go down. And for quite a while, they didn't. They actually stayed quite elevated. What's interesting, 2017 was kind of a magic year. 2017 is where a lot of numbers kind of came together, and you saw a divergence between the medical market and the commercial adult use market. I'll show you that as we go through here. But since that point, and as of February 1st, this is what we're down to. We're down about 36%. People just aren't getting the card. In fact, there's a lot of things about the industry right now that's got the industry concerned in Colorado. They're afraid the bubble has popped. I'll show you that data as we get there. The commercial adult use marketplace, about products and profit and potency. I leave this in just because everyone said, oh, here we go. Here's the McDonald's and Starbucks analogy. Let me give you the backside story because this started in our shop. When I was at Rocky Mountain HITDA, we realized that after the 2012 election, the biggest thing we heard is nobody knew where to go to get good information. The only voice that was out there was the pro side, and they were loud. Okay? So we started producing these impact reports. Well, as we're looking at different topic matters, one of the guys at the table made the remark, you know, it's like when you drive down the street, you see Starbucks and McDonald's and Starbucks and McDonald's. In some parts of our town, all you see are green leaves and green crosses, and it's like, okay, the dispensaries. We got one area of town on South Broadway. It's like you can't swing a cat without hitting something that's marijuana related down there, right? So we said, I know, hold my beer and get the video camera. I got an idea. Let's reach out to Starbucks. Let's reach out to McDonald's and ask them, how many shops have you had? And then we'll compare those to the registered retail and registered medical shops we've got. In the back, you're not going to be able to see this. I've got updated information, but the caveat there, that's June of 17. For the first couple of years, we'd reach out to Starbucks and McDonald's, and they would talk to us and they'd give us the information. June of 17, all I got was crickets. They had me on their terrorist no-fly list, I guess, for information. The phone calls go unanswered, there's no response to it. So as of 17, this is what we had for Starbucks and McDonald's. You guys tell me, more or less in terms of dispensaries. Yeah, that's a given. We all know that story. But here's the real story now. As of yesterday, here's the numbers. We've gone from 513 medical to down to 383. 491 rec to 668. This is important. Listen up. There is no money in medical. The real money is in commercial adult sales, and I'll show you why here. The blue line shows our dispensaries that were there for the medical model. The green bars that are there are the dispensaries that opened up for commercial adult use, also recreational. 2017, there's that year again. That's where they kind of broke even. Anytime the tide's coming in and out, you need to pay attention to that data set. And what we can see is that since then, there's been a continual decline in the number of marijuana dispensaries set up for medical purposes, even though we have all these people with debilitating medical conditions. But yet the commercial adult sales are going through the roof. At least on paper they are. Here's our state. That's 5.7 million people in the blue. As of the first part of the year, 70,000 people, 533, have got a license. Is that a sustainable business model if you're in business? You're going to be able to service what, about 184 people on an average. If you're trying to make a profit, no, it really isn't. So then the question is, gee, how do we get out of this? And what can we do to get into an expanded market? Because if it's just the medical side, you've got to have that medical card. Well, the good news is they didn't have to work too hard for it. We've already got great examples how we can use age-based sales as a caveat. We saw it with alcohol, we saw it with cigarettes. It's worked very well for those industries. Gee, why don't we reinvent the wheel and do the same thing? And that's exactly what's happened. By going to this commercial adult use, they can now go over to 70% of our population. In our state, we've got 64 counties. Over half of those have opted out. In the very beginning, there was opt-out provisions in legalization. Now in recent years, you don't hear about the opt-out provisions. It's everybody's in or everybody's out. But this is what we've seen. They understand that people are willing to be mobile. They'll drive into Denver to get their product, and then they'll go back home to their counties where it's not legal. Here's where the metal and the meat come together. This is on the marijuana sales for medical. The blue line is bud. That's raw flower. And what do we notice about it? It's going down. The demand for it by market share has gone down. Where we've seen increases, concentrates and edibles. And I'll show you why here in just a second. So that's for the marijuana sales. We look at for the commercial adult use, and we see an even more rapid decline than what we saw in the medical for raw bud. But again, concentrates and edibles are really, really popular. Or bang for the buck, it's ease of use. When we compare them side by side, there's where flower sales are at. When we look at edibles, there's where they're at. And when we take a look at concentrates, really popular. Really popular. So when we look at this, we got to ask ourselves, well, what's the financial impact? By the way, brand new stuff. When I say brand new, I was sitting at Midway Airport building this slide for you guys yesterday afternoon. Okay? The reason the carrot's there, both election cycles. If you guys legalize this, you are going to have so much money. It's going to be coming in by truckloads. You're not even going to know how to handle so much money. Don't be fooled. There is a lot of money in this. But we're going to talk about the flip side of that coin in a second. So we look for commercial adult use. There's the tax revenues by year up through last year. Like I said, I just got this data last night. All right, well, if this all started with medical, then it should be a pretty good return on the medical investment as well. We take a look at it, it's not quite the case. When we first started this, about 70% of our revenue sales were based from the medical. Now we're down to less than 4%. That number is actually going to be a little bit lower. 21 was a record year for us. We were bringing in $1.2 million a day in tax revenue. 22, the bottom fell out of the market. And the industry's scared. When you read the trade journals, has the bubble popped? You know, we have to let 50, 60 people go from a dispensary, from a grow operation, because we can't afford to keep them. It's just too expensive to grow. It's too expensive to maintain. It's too expensive to produce. We're not making enough money. Look at the revenues. That's a heck of a drop. About a 20% drop overall in tax revenues coming in. But you know what the question is? What's it costing the state? We've been encouraging the state for years. Follow the money. And that's great. They've got great websites that can tell me how much product we sold, how many concentrates we sold, what the tax revenues were. But to figure out a return on the investment, we have to understand, what is it costing us to do business? What's it costing the state? What's it costing the counties, the municipalities to stand up programs, enforcement, registration, inspection? Nobody's tracking the data. So if I don't know what it's costing me, how can I tell you if we're in the red and the black on this thing? We actually even tried to get an economic group to come in and do just an impact study economically. Was this a good idea? And the group we talked to said, fabulous idea, won't work. Why not? He said, great idea, you're probably 10 years away from really knowing, was this effective or not? Back to causation and correlation, right? He said, all we'd be doing would be coming up with a methodology for you. So you're not there yet. But in the meantime, we keep plodding along, even though we're not sure what it's doing for us. That big blue blob, state of Colorado, that windfall of money, that's that little sliver right there. I'm not sure that was the windfall we all were thinking. I thought the pie slice was going to be a little bigger for us, to be quite honest with you. Public health concerns, because this is one of the common themes that we come up. If commercial cannabis is causing so many problems, what's the real issue? Spoiler alert, it's potency. When we take a look at potency of these things, this was a great study that came out 2 years ago. It took several different studies, combined them in together to a systematic review, and it looked at, from the mid-60s up until about 2017, what were the potency levels being detected and tested. And what we can see for raw biomass, for flower, it started off way over here in the 60s when we all had hair and skinny little waists, and it has gradually combed itself up. When we take a look at the concentrates, this back in the day, 7 to 10%, that was hash and hash oil. Dave, when was the last time you saw hash or hash oil?
One time.
I mean, the great thing about that, Helen Keller could find that stuff. I mean, it just absolutely stunk, okay? Now we've got all the concentrates and the different products being produced. So where are we today? When we take a look at raw biomass flour, you can buy biomass flour on the public marketplace between 30 and 40% purity of THC. The industry back 5 years ago said, oh, you'll never see anything higher than 12 to 15%. Well, their scientists and their botanists and the agronomists got it together and they figured it out pretty quick. For concentrates, 90 plus. 90 plus. I mean, that's an incredibly potent product that's out there. But what? People are willing to pay for it. And like any good industry, if they're willing to pay for it, we'll produce it. And that's exactly what's going on. Product types, the edibles. By the way, did you guys also get the potato chips that we sent down for you for your lunches from Colorado? Just check. If you can eat it, if you consume it as a liquid, it's an edible product. Very discreet, doesn't leave the smell, okay? The drawback is it's a slow load. If I eat that gummy bear or that half a gummy bear or that 1/6 of an oatmeal raisin chocolate chip cookie, by the way, who eats 1/6 of an oatmeal raisin chocolate? 6, yes. 1/6, no. But that's the dosage you. I got to give it time. My body has to metabolize it. It's got to get through my liver. And about 30, 40, 45 minutes later, yeah, okay, now we start coming on. Unlike other products, though, people are kind of hedonistic by nature. We want that instant gratification. So I want to get high now. So I take my cookie, I take a bite, eating high. Oh, here we go. Nothing. What's human nature tell me to do? Eat more cookie. Yeah. So what happens is you eat the whole cookie. You now have like 8 to 10 dosage units in your system, and in about 45 minutes, the heart starts to beat faster, palms get sweaty, dry mouth, I get a little nervous. At this age, I think I'm having a stroke. Call the paramedics, they're going to yell clear, and they're going to go through my wallet before I get loaded into the ambulance. That's not the case. This is just potency levels that they're not used to. That's the problem that we're running into this. So as discreet as they are, you can use them in the workplace, you can use them in the school, either as a student, as a teacher, you know. Nobody's going to know. Nobody's going to know. Next product, raw biomass, raw flour. I used to use the analogy of the Charlie Brown Christmas tree for weed. Because for a lot of us, that was what we saw our friends growing. In their basement, in their closets, in their dorm room. Certainly none of my friends. I was at church that night. Okay? But this is the reality of the new plants. These are things the size of lilac bushes. In law enforcement, we use an equation. If I seize a plant, check. I'm going to count it as 1 pound of end product. Check. We are so underestimating this. They actually harvested this plant. And as they harvested it down, they took the buds, they took the leaves, they took all the cola, and they kept the stems and all the stuff you're not going to use and separated it. There's more than 1 pound of product on this plant. The shadow of this plant probably weighs close to a pound, right? Over 25 pounds of usable product came off the one plant. So captive. Maybe it's something you need to look at. As we look at seizures, do we need to strip and weigh them out? There's a lot of changes that need to happen because we've always done it this way. The one that concerns me the most is not so much about the edibles or the plant, it's the concentrates. Who's ever heard of a thing called THCA, tetrahydrocannabinolic acid? Anybody? I got one or two hands. Okay, 2 hands. Okay, quick chemistry lesson. THC bonds with an acid. THCA. I can eat it, I can put it in my pocket, I can rub it in my belly, nothing's going to happen. But I take it and I go over to a really high heat source and I put it over that heat. And it goes through a process called decarboxylation, which means that little bond right there goes away. As the acid goes away, what am I left with? THC. You can buy this product, and it's about the size of a big piece of rock salt. You can buy it on the open market. 99.5% potency. THCA is to marijuana what crack was to cocaine, what ice was to meth, or if you want a little more guttural thing, what Everclear would be to a wine cooler. It's about potency. This has nothing to do with cannabis for medicinal purposes. Is there information that suggests maybe marijuana does have a therapeutic benefit for pain management? Yeah. There's research coming out for that. But we're talking 3%, 4%, 5%. Certainly not 60, certainly not 80, certainly not in the 90s. Okay? Again, research. We need more research to understand the drug. We need to understand more research time. If you've ever played darts, I was reading an epidemiological study and took 27 different studies and somebody melded it all into one. And if you've got trouble sleeping at night, I will send this to you. You won't get past methodology and be sound asleep. But what I realized that this is really about a dart game. We throw the first dart in there and it's about public health. We look at THC's relationship to toxicity and hospital admissions. We throw the next dart, it's a highway safety. What about THC's involvement in impaired driving cases or fatal crashes? We throw another dart. What about cannabis use disorders? Well, what are we finding out? The earlier you start, the more you smoke, the more potency it becomes, the greater your risk of adverse mental health outcomes. Next dart, mental health issues. This goes back to THC potency inducing psychosis. People go into the ER, ED, they're acting out, they get admitted from the ER and ED, and miraculously, most of them, 36 to 48 hours later, are fine. They detoxed. They just detoxed. Last one, drug treatment rates. Now, I've got a question I'm going to pose to you guys now, and when we get down to Q&A, I want to follow up on this because we were talking about this morning. In Colorado, along with the other states, 12 to 17-year-olds go into drug treatment primarily for marijuana-related issues. Now, I tried to pull New Hampshire's data, and I got one of those moments. I found 15, 16, 17, 18, and I get to 19, 12 to 17-year-olds, zeros for drug treatment admissions. 19, 20, 21. So none of your 12 to 17-year-olds have substance use disorders, or what's going on? So if someone's got an answer, I need that one filled for me, okay? So hang on to that, we'll come back to it. Bottom line being, when you look at all these studies and everything they're talking about, the one arrow that they're not thrown into is talking about potency. Potency is kind of at the core of a lot of this issue. And that's one of the things we have to address. What's the big deal about it? Well, I'll tell you what, in the long term, we need to understand the pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics of this particular drug, what it does in our body and to our body, especially at the potency levels that we're seeing now. These are levels that we have never had before. We got research that's being done on it, we got research that's starting to come out, but it's nascent. Okay, we need to have a better understanding of this. Okay, short term, you guys kind of got this one. So many states will not even discuss putting a cap on potency of products. If potency is the issue, why don't we dial it back a little bit? Why don't we put limits on this one so we can understand the science and the research and what really goes on with this in our bodies? The long-term goal on this one is just that. Let science and research catch up to policy formation. Okay? Applaud you guys because you guys did make an effort at potency limits, which is great. So many states will not even talk about it at this point. Everyone drives a car. Everyone rides in a car. So that's why highway safety is a big issue. I've got different words for you in this presentation. We're going to change vocabulary. Not accidents, crashes. Do accidents happen in motor vehicles? Yeah. You're pulling out of the grocery store, you're trying to yell at the kids, you're trying to adjust the radio, and as you back out, you crease the car next to you. You're not drunk, you're not high, you're just distracted, and you crease the car. That's an accident. Nobody meant it to happen, but it happened. Crashes. Crashes involve other things. Intent and choices. I choose to sit at the bar and drink. I choose to sit at my house or a friend's house and smoke or vape. I've made that choice. That's an intentional move. I now choose to move over here and grab my car keys. I now choose to put myself behind the wheel of the car. I choose to start it, I choose to back it up and put it into traffic. And then I have a crash. You see the distinction. There's a lot of intentional motions that take place into that one. The reason this comes to mind, we've got one of our speakers. She's a traffic safety resource prosecutor in the state of Illinois. Anytime we use the word accident, you could hear her in a ballroom of 1,000 people here go, "Argh!" And she finally explained to me, how do you justify to a family member that has lost somebody in a fatal collision involving marijuana, and it's an accident? It wasn't an accident. There's a lot of deliberate acts that took place before that. Was it the intent and purpose of it that happened? No. But what was the outcome? So we're trying to change some of the dialogue. Get away from accidents, we're talking about crashes. You take a look at this one. This is an offset head-on back in my old jurisdiction. You can see the weather conditions were terrible. It was a dark and stormy night. The snow was on the ground. What makes two cars in broad daylight on a nice clean roadway hit head-on? Both drivers are dead as Kelsey's cat on Good Friday. Neither tested positive for alcohol. Both, unfortunately, tested positive for THC. Now, if you hear nothing else, look up for just a second. I am not saying marijuana causes these accidents. If I tried to assert that position to you, you know I was full of crap and couldn't be able to back it up. But what I am saying is this, that the presence of marijuana in our community, the prevalence of marijuana in our driving community is becoming such that we have to start looking at this as a contributing factor. The same way that we talk about distracted driving, don't text, don't drive. The word about don't drink and drive, I think people are getting that message finally, especially with the younger generation. My son-in-law and daughter, when they go out somewhere and they know they're going to be drinking, they Uber it. Okay, it's going to cost you $50 in an Uber. That's better than $14,000 in legal fees. They get it. We're missing a messaging opportunity here. We're still trying to learn so much about how marijuana and THC impact highway safety. Everybody know where Boulder, Colorado is? Kind of north and west of the metro area. We talk about it as 36 square miles surrounded by reality. It's just a little different place up there. There's an accident outside of Boulder. The guy chooses to go to a friend's house. They're playing Xbox, they're smoking, they're playing Xbox, they're vaping, and finally he goes, time to go. He makes the choice now to get back into his car. He makes the choice to put the key in the ignition, back out. He comes up to an intersection, looks left, looks right, makes a right turn, and the right rear wheel goes over a kid, right? Well, no curb, unfortunately, it's a 10-year-old. What we're learning about peripheral vision is that's one of the first things that's affected. It's almost like taking the cardboard tube out of the paper towels and looking through it while you drive. He may have looked left and right, made a full and complete stop as required by law. Unfortunately, that kid just may have been in the gray area. The other thing we're finding out, unlike alcohol, if I take a drink of alcohol, one 12-ounce beer, a 4-ounce glass of wine, or an ounce and a half of distilled alcohol, I consume that right now. How long does it take for my body to process that? Anybody? 1 hour. See, that's great. You used to ask that question, I was like, I don't know. Give him another cup of coffee? Yeah, that's what you need, a wide awake drunk. Yeah, 1 hour. We don't have that understanding about THC yet. We don't understand the pharmacokinetics, how it moves through our bodies, the pharmacodynamics, what it does within our body. We don't have that. We don't have the BAC for THC like we have for alcohol. But what we're finding out now through research, as soon as the driver stops, within a few minutes, the THC level actually starts to drop because you're not adding to it. Now, that feeling of being high, that feeling of being impaired, that stays elevated for a while. It's just like with your buddy that goes to the party with you, and he's had that 2 or 3 drinks too many. Okay, I'm going to sit here and have a couple cups of coffee. Because like I said, everybody loves a wide awake drunk at 2 o'clock in the morning. So what happens? About an hour, hour and a half later, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I think I'm okay to get home. Well, if you're saying, I think I'm okay to get home, you're probably not. But internally, I'm thinking, yeah, I've got this covered. And then you meet one of us. And now we've got objective eyes versus subjective eyes. And we're seeing that the physical coordination is off, the dexterity is off, the motor skills are off. That can stay elevated for 6 to 8 to 10 hours. In some cases, there are reports of even longer than that, even into the next day, depending on the product that's being used. Okay? So we look at highway safety issues. There's a lot we've got to learn. Any of these bars that you see now in blue are pre-shift to commercial adult use, our medical model. Anything in green is now into commercial adult use. This is the total number of crashes, not accidents, crashes by year, and we've seen an increase. Now, so you guys have both sides of the equation on this thing, so you have both sides of the coin, or all three of them. We have had a huge influx of people moving into Colorado. Okay, more people coming into Colorado, more people driving. So the risk, the potentiality for more accidents remains elevated. The only good thing COVID has done for us, look what COVID did. We had about a 30-some-odd% decrease in our crash rates. That's awesome. Less people are driving, the secret's out, you can actually work from home and be productive. Life is good. Remember that little reduction right there. So let's take all these crashes and let's then look at our fatal crash rates. 20, 21, 22, significantly lower. 20, 21, 22 data is still pending. They've got to the end of December of this year to get their data. But notice what happened. They didn't go down. They went up. They went up. We take a look at fatalities, and let's break those fatalities out by drivers that are just testing positive and see what those changes are. So from 11 to 21, our fatality rate's gone up by about 40%. Not good. What's happened, though, is we're starting to test more drivers involved in those fatal crashes, and what we're finding out is our rate is up about 128% for drivers testing positive. See, this goes back to this presence and prevalence in our community. That's what I'm saying. It's something you need to be aware of as you move forward. There's the actual numbers. I had a guy go, Quig, 162 people. Is that really a big deal? And I'll ask you, is 162 people really a big deal? Yes or no? Yeah, especially if you're one of them or related to one of them. That's 162 children's, mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, whatever you want to do. That's 162 people that died. Bottom line is, it's up substantially. All right, so I gave you the end value. What about the percentage and change? What's the percentage of all fatality crashes that are being traced back with positive toxicology? Pre-legalization, recreational, go back to 2010, about 10%. This last go around, 28%. That's a notable increase. And why is it such a pattern when we start looking at data like this, that after 2013 we see increases? Things that make you pause and go, huh? When we take a look at alcohol being detected in these cases, that's obnoxious. Thought it was my pacemaker for a minute. The real line is, yes, honey, I'll pick up a loaf of bread on the way home. When we're testing, marijuana is coming up more often as a standalone drug by itself. Marijuana and alcohol is number 2. The scary thing is, this isn't simple math. It's not 1 + 1 = 2. Okay? This becomes synergistic because of potency. 1 + 3 is now 7. Again, we don't have a good enough understanding about THC on this thing. Everyone's got a little something to say about this. Normal, they discourage driving if you're using. Stay away from it. Don't get behind the wheel of the car. I've seen advisors say if you're using concentrates, don't drive for the rest of the day. We take a look at our friend at Columbia University. For about 15 years now, they've been saying, yeah, if you're using it, your rate of having a collision is going up almost 3 times. The folks at HITDA, they're saying exactly what they should say. Yeah, it's an intoxicant. Don't get behind the wheel after using it. It's like one of those duh moments, right? Who's got teenagers in your life? Reluctantly, the hands go up. Dave, I've been picking on you all day, Holmes, so we're going to keep going. How old are the kids?
15 and a half and 12.
Boy, girl, one of
2
each?
boys.
2 boys? Watch what happens to your insurance rates. Who's got girls in your lives? Teenage girls?
I'm 16.
That's good, and you're here. I had 2 teenage daughters once too, Lucifer and Beelzebub.
Wow.
Oh, I'm blessed. They're great kids, okay? One's giving us grandchildren, and the other one just got my last savings account because I paid for her wedding last year. Okay? So sad. Students Against Destructive Drivers got with our friends at Liberty Mutual. You know, Emu Doug and the guy with the... Who ever came up with an advertising campaign to put a yellow shirt, a bowling shirt, on an emu? Okay? Apparently it's working. They did a youth risk behavior survey back in 10 years ago. Did you do this? And if you did this, what are the consequences? If you did this, what were the outcomes? One of the questions is, have you ever gotten behind the wheel of a car after drinking? Have you ever gotten behind the wheel of a car after smoking marijuana? And of that group, 25% said, yeah, I've done that. Of that 25%, the follow-up was, were you impaired even to the slightest degree? 3/4 of those respondents said, no, I was perfectly in control. I knew exactly what I was doing. I had everything under control. I was fine. This part of the process comes from this part of the brain. That prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that helps with the risk management, making decisions. Gee, if I jump off this roof, this could be a really bad idea. Okay. That brain is still developing. So, you know, ladies, God bless you with a brain that matures so much faster than the men's does. And I'm not telling you anything you haven't already figured out in your lifetime. And if you haven't heard this before, take notes. Okay? Gentlemen, we're still on the little short bus wearing a helmet. Till we're in our late 20s and early 30s. This is why you're hearing, though, a call for abstinence. Wait until you're in your 20s. Let the brain finish the myelination process. Let that brain figure out what's important for us to survive. And then go ahead and start putting chemicals into it. Okay? That's why the call for just to delay it is based on that factor alone. Okay? Now, we take a look at this. We understand, kids, you know, the brain's still maturing. Are they really in a position to look at this? Well, we're making decisions about use at this age, so we decided we'd look at use rates. So we took a look at use rates in 3 age groups, 12 to 17, 18 to 25, and 26 and older. By the way, that's my state capitol, downtown Denver. This is the lawn in front of the Capitol, all the way over here, as you're looking from this direction. In fact, if you turn 90 degrees right, you're looking at that statue. At the other end of that mall, that's the courthouse for the city and county of Denver. Yes, the date is 4:20, the time is 4:20 in the afternoon. I didn't live far from here, so we used to go down there every 4:20 and watch the show. I showed this to a group in Texas, and this guy's sitting up front and he goes, wait a minute, all those people smoking marijuana? Yeah, probably. Was the police there? Yes, sir. Well, why didn't they go in there and start arresting people? They're not supposed to smoke in public. Okay, General Custer, let's talk about this game plan. How do you take 200 or 300 cops in there and start pulling people aside? Because as soon as you do that, that's when the fecal matter is hitting the oscillating fan. Okay? Bad things are going to happen. So you got to make your choices. So we take a look at this. We wanted to see about current use rates. And the great thing about NASD and SAMHSA, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, the National Survey of Drug Use and Health that they use, they ask about current use, and that's at least once in the last 30-day period. Okay? Not weekly, not daily or near daily, but just once in the last 30-day period. So that's the standard here. You're going to see 3 colors. Colorado's in orange, the national colors are in blue, and the great state of New Hampshire's in yellow. Okay? So we look at the 12 to 17-year-olds over a period of time, not picking out just 1 year because it fits a storyline. We take a look at over a period of time. What we see is that overall, the numbers have decreased for this 12 to 17-year-old age bracket, which is great news, which is fabulous news. The problem I run into goes back to the question I asked you earlier. In a lot of the states that have allowed legalization, marijuana is the #1 reason 12 to 17-year-olds are going into drug treatment programs. So, okay, the rates are going down, but the consequences are going up. And that's why I've got the curiosity about your drug treatment admission stuff. 18 to 25, where this group is decreasing, this is the largest cohort we have, not only nationally, but in Colorado. We can see that the numbers are quite elevated. Same for here, same for us, okay? You think about it, I'm 18, I'm out of the house, I'm in college, I can make my own choices, I'm out of college, I can make my own money, I'm making my own decisions. There's no surprise in this one. This one caught me by surprise. Anyone over age of 26 in here? Most of us except you. This is the fastest growing group we have that are initiating or reinitiating with this product. Reinitiating that, well, I haven't smoked since I was in college, and that was 45 years ago, blah, 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 blah. Or, gee, I've never smoked before because it's been illegal. Well, if it's not illegal, then there's no harm, no foul, right? Because how could it be bad for you? The state's selling it, the state's taxing it. It must be okay for me. Everyone tells me it's less hazardous than alcohol. Yeah, let's give it a try. Here's part of the real reason. Who in this room's over 40 right now? Wear proud. Wear proud. Okay? I use the analogy, and you're giggling over here because you know where I'm going with this. Have you noticed there's some days you get up and you just hurt? Have you caught yourself making your dad's sound? You know what the dad sound is? Oy. Oh, my knees. Oy. I did that the first time I read it. He's back. Yeah, he's back. We're trying to find some moderation in pain. Like I said, there's research that supports low dosage THC may be an effective moderator for pain. 3, 4, 5%, not like we talked about. So we're trying to find options. We've seen what's happened with the opioid world, right? Bad stuff. And with the counterfeits that out there and fentanyl, God, Deb and I were talking about this earlier. I mean, this is some scary, scary stuff that's out there right now, especially for your generation. Sorry, honey. We tried. Take a look at the numbers. Increase, 137, 82, decreased by 107%. If I'm trying to inflame an argument, that's all you're going to hear from me. Did you realize that Colorado's up 137%? Oh my God, it's terrible. You got to know these numbers. 7.6 to 1811. You've got to know those numbers to understand the content and context that those numbers actually represent. Again, you can make data spin. You have to have a clear understanding of both sides of the equation on this thing. We talk about drug usage in America. This is 2019. Still waiting on the 21 data numbers to come out. I'm being promised those by the third quarter. So when I come back in October, November, we'll give you some good stuff. Alcohol, marijuana, cigarette, prescription opioids. The big four. Notice they account for the vast majority of the numbers in 2019. 2020, we get COVID hits. Numbers went down. Okay, that's good. That's not bad. The only place that causes me a little bit of concern, hallucinogens. I think a lot of that has to do because there's a big push to legalize some hallucinogens, whether it's psilocybin or LSD. And unfortunately, heroin numbers doubled. So these are people that said, yes, in this particular year, I've decided to start using a drug. And this was the drug I have chosen. With me? 2.8 million people. That's how many people started with marijuana that year. Has anyone seen 2.8 million people in one place at one time? I haven't. Well, maybe Chicago yesterday. I think they were all on my flight last night, too. When we break this down, I mean, 7,600 people a day decided, you know, today's the day. Probably after sitting through this presentation. Today's the day. Break it down by hour, 300 plus people. A little more granular, it's about 5 people a minute. Or about one person every 12 seconds decides today's the day. Does that mean everyone gets addicted? No. That's one of the arguments you hear from the extreme on the other side. Oh, if you smoke it, it's highly addictive, you're going to become addicted. No. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Okay? You've got to balance the information. Take responsibility for education on this thing. The thing that scares me is this. If so many people are using, what's the perception of risk? So we look at 2019 numbers. If you can't read in the back, I'll give it for you. Heroin, cocaine, cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana. We take a look at the next year's numbers, just about the same. We already know what cigarettes and alcohol are doing in our society in terms of what it's costing us, right? But now, here's a messaging opportunity I think we're missing. We're seeing about a 60% decrease in the perception of risk of marijuana, the drugs that we already know are causing problems. If you're in prevention, here's the messaging for the next target audience, the kids. Because they are target audience. Your generation is being courted because when you turn 18, when you turn 21, it's just white noise. If you're born anytime after the year 2000 in Colorado, marijuana is the adult talking in the Peanuts cartoon. It's just white noise. Can't be bad for them. State taxes it. They sell it over here. They sell it there. They advertise it all over there. How could it be bad for me? Okay, that's where the white noise comes in. You do a lot on social media?
Yeah.
You get a lot of exposure to marijuana on social media?
Try to block those out.
That would be a yes. Yeah. One report I read said on an average day, kids spend time, swiping and whatever you're doing, 30 to 40 exposures a day about what's great about marijuana. Whether it's fancy things to do with the vapor or a celebrity endorsement. We're missing the boat here, folks. This is a great messaging opportunity. If we give good information to people, they can make informed decisions. But these are decisions that's based on facts, not hype. How about THC and some health-related data? This is new stuff. Just added this in a couple weeks ago. New vocabulary word for you. The issue of overdosing. Why? Because you hear one side say, well, no one's ever overdosed on marijuana like they have on heroin. Well, yeah, I can't really tell you. I can think of one person that used marijuana and overdosed and died immediately because of it. Not like we see with heroin, not like we see with fentanyl. The population on this needs to understand you don't have to die to have an overdose. Okay? Can I overdose on heroin? Yes or no? Can I overdose on cocaine? Can I overdose on alcohol? Can I overdose on water? Someone tell me why. You're the first group that gave me a resounding yes. Somebody know why?
Throws your electrolytes off.
Electrolytes go off, pH goes out of balance. We saw when the MDMA, ecstasy, was real big in the rave population, these kids would drink copious amounts of water, and they would throw their potassium and sodium levels so out of whack that their kidneys and liver would go, okay, we're done. And it would shut down. That's what we're seeing. So if we can overdose in something like water, can we overdose on THC? Yeah. It's the perception. By stepping back, remember that challenge to step back a little bit? Take a look at things. What we're talking about is toxicity. If you take too much too soon, too fast, you're going to have an issue with toxicity. And that's what we're seeing in the hospitalizations. Going back to 2015, the University of Pittsburgh basically said, yeah, if you've got dispensaries in your area, you're going to see more hospital admissions related back to medical marijuana issues. More ER visits. This came back a year ahead of that. Came out in JAMA. Physicians are saying, yeah, we have these people reporting to our ERs and EDs and seeing full-blown psychotic states. And miraculously, in about 48 hours, most of them are fine. Toxicity. That's the issue that we're talking about. Okay? This is a trick question. I'll tell you right up front. Colorado ER discharge rates with marijuana codes. Well, look, they went down by 23%. That's good news, right? Two things happen at an ER. You go into an ER, you get discharged because there's not an issue. If I don't get discharged, what happens to me? I get admitted. So while those numbers go down, and it looks like, hey, that's pretty good stuff, it's down by 23%. We look at hospital admissions discharges. These are people that went in, whatever treatment they got, and the hospital billing code, ICD-10, relates back to something about marijuana. And we can see these numbers going up and remaining elevated. And again, from 2013 on. Now, I'll give you just one little tidbit. Right in about here, there was a change between ICD-9 and ICD-10 billing codes. Okay, so you got to be real careful when you're looking at this type of data. This is actual billing codes going back that far, but you got to be careful. Are you talking about one hospital, or are you talking about a whole group or a state? In this case, this is rate per 100,000 for Colorado. This is some new information we've got access to. Our Department of Health, and if you're interested on this, you can go to the Department of Public Health and Environment, CDPHE, and they got this great website and great interactive dashboards you can play with. You can separate these out by billing codes. So the blue here is for use and cannabis use disorders. This little orange thing are for poisonings, and that little gray bar is the new one. That's for neonatal exposures at birth. So what we've seen when we talk about cannabis use, it's gone up about 75%. When we take a look at THC poisonings, it's up about 8%, but the newborn exposure rate, because mom has decided, chose to use in utero, it's gone up 128% per 100,000. We've got baristas and bud tenders saying, no, don't smoke during pregnancy. Don't smoke, because you've got morning sickness. Instead, try this gummy bear. It's still THC. THC is in so many products. That's the commercialization that we're talking about. And unfortunately, that's the sad effect of it. We took a look at this one by age group. This is another one of those, well, wait a minute. Am I trying to inflame the story moments? Obviously, we can take a look at this age group. That's the 18 to 25. This is 6 to 17 years of age. Those are your top two groups. When we look at the delta, the rate of exchange increases, decreases, what comes up is this one. In ages 6 and under, up 7,000%. Anytime someone throws a number at you that's in the high 3 digits, and especially when they throw a comma in front of it, you've got to know. You have got to know what the end values are. The first year they were tracking this, it was 15.1 per 100,000. Pretty substantial increase, almost 1,100. So the little guys are getting into the stuff. Broke it out even one more step. Everyone talks about social justice issues. Well, let's talk about race. Nobody likes to talk about it, right? It makes us uncomfortable. We take a look at this, we can see that in Colorado, our black population, our African American population is leading treatments. Okay? Underneath that, Native American and Alaskan. Not a lot of Alaskans in our neck of the woods, but they get lumped together. Takeaway. Other, 173. Unknown, 82. If we're not collecting good data, how can we get good information out? If we're not capturing good information, we're not sharing good information. It's incomplete. So that was my takeaway on this one. That jumped out. This is one caught me by surprise as a grandparent. Pre-medicalization or pre-recreation. Blue is medical era, green is adult use. These are the average calls to a poison control center in Colorado. Okay? A lot of people are opting not to go to an ER. They'll go to poison control. The median call rate in the medical era was about 64. Legalization for adult use, pretty substantial increase that we had to it. When we break this down even a little further, we can see what the actual numbers are, but we can see the transfer we've had, again, since we legalized for commercial adult use to about 190%. Sir,
Do you know what the cost for each call to the poison control center?
were you listening to my phone call last week?
No, I wasn't, but I'm just wondering.
We're trying to figure out what the cost was to the hospitals and to the poison control centers as a result of this. We know that many of the admissions that go into the hospitals are public insurance. In other words, we're paying for it. There's some private insurance involved. So this goes back to part of that economic study that we were talking about. This is one of the things that we're trying to get a handle on. What's it costing? And we're not sure we're going to be able to do it in Colorado. We're thinking maybe in Pennsylvania we'll be able to get some data from their children's hospital from there. Great question, though. Combined data set. This is the cluster call. Anything in green is marijuana only, where marijuana is the only thing identified in the call. Yellow is marijuana plus something else, okay? And we can see that since 2012, the year it went on to our ballot, all the way through to now, marijuana only seems to be the dominant reason why people are calling the Poison Control Center. Here's where the twist comes in. This one I had to think back on a little. Intentions by exposure, okay? Well, okay, intentional. I'm using this product because I mean to get high. I'm using this product because I want the desired result. So we can see that in the blue line. As we get past where we went to commercial adult use, we see this red line start to increase. Those are unintentional, accidental exposures. Well, okay, so being the cop, if we're having accidental exposures, what are they accidentally being exposed to? Took a product type. These are your edibles, raw plant material, concentrates, others, e-liquid vaping devices. But right now, so we've got a high number of unintentional exposures involving edible products. Okay, so we know the product, we know what's happening. Who's using it? This is my grandson, guys. This is my grandson. This shouldn't be happening. We try to encourage people. If you're gonna, it's like having a gun in the house. It's like having alcohol in the house. It's like having prescription drugs in the house. Be responsible with what you're doing with it. Keep it out of the hands of little kids. Lock it up. My kids grew up around guns, obviously, and they knew you don't touch, you don't go near them. When their friends said, "Hey, let's go see your dad's guns," no, we're not doing that. Okay. They got it. They understood. But unfortunately, this has gone up over 500%. Yeah. This is what's happened now. These are calls, the percentage of calls to the Poison Control Center in Colorado that are involving kids under 5 and marijuana-only calls. About half of their calls now are going to this. I asked the question earlier, does that mean if I use it we're going to get addicted? No, we're not. This is a great report that came out a couple of years ago that addresses that very issue. But before we talk about this, and we have to understand human nature, anytime I tell you 1 in 3 this, 1 in 4 that, if I say 1 in 4, that's me, you, and you. Well, if it's 1 in 4, it's not going to be me, so it's going to have to be somebody over here, right? Have you ever noticed it's never us? It's never us. How many of you had a car accident or a car crash? Yeah. Did you mean to do it that day? Statistically, it caught up with you. Trying to teach this to the kids. I teach some high school classes. I'm trying to get to them to start thinking critically and going through this. So this study just looked at people who use cannabis products. What's the risk of developing a disorder? So the good news is only about 1 in 5, only about 20% run that risk. That's great. That means 80% don't. So does everyone going to get addicted? No. But if you want to compound the odds, use it more often. Use a higher potency. Then your odds of developing a dependency goes up. And if you really want to compound it, 1 in 3 chance if you're using it weekly or more often. Here's the keys. How do we get this information across where it makes sense that 1 in X poses a risk? And I sat there for a couple days. I played with every model I could. And I came up with nothing. And then woke up one morning, and that's what 1 in 5 looks like. That's what 1 in 5 looks like. I got 4 chances of finding an empty chamber, and I'm going to be okay. But what happens when that one time I find the live round in the chamber? And to compound it, I'm going to start early. I'm going to smoke often. I'm going to use high potency product. All that's doing is increasing my odds ratio, my risk ratio for something bad happening. This goes back to that messaging. Why is marijuana considered 66% less harmful than alcohol and cigarettes? This is part of the information that we need to get out and need kids to understand. Consistency messaging, accuracy in messaging, okay? It's there, we can do it. We just need to make the choice to. Wrapping up, I love history. Been around to see a few years of it. Love Mark Twain. The line that he wrote, I absolutely think is just so accurate to this. What gets us into trouble is not what we don't know, it's what we know for sure that just ain't so. We're all so convinced of what we've been told and what we've heard that it's so easy just to sit there and just suck it in like a sponge. It takes an effort to educate. It takes an effort to educate yourselves and take the responsibility to be a good consumer of information, right? Question I've got for you. Raise a hand. Who heard or learned something new you didn't know? I'm putting in for raise. All the hands are up.
There you go.
There you go. If you learn something new, share it. If you hear misinformation, correct it. All right? Here's the call for you. There's our QR code to the website. There's our social media sites. Again, what you're not going to find out there is demon weed, reefer madness. It's just fact, science, and data. And the good news is, you get to read it and make an assessment of the value. Same information we just did here for the last hour. You make the assessment of value too. If it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter. Move on. But if it does matter, now you have a resource to go to. Okay? There's my contact address for an email. Feel free to reach out to me. Hey, I was in your thing in Concord, and I had a question about X, Y, and Z. If I'm on the road, it generally takes me about 36 to 48 hours to catch up with you, unless, like Celeste, and I just blow her off altogether. This QR code right here, this will take you to a survey link. This is the one that will take you about 3 minutes to do, all right? Please take the time, because truly, I don't get a chance to pick everyone's brains, and I know most of you got good stuff you want to share. This is a really easy way to do it. And I guess the challenge I'd have for you in closing, if I said something today, you go, yeah, the old guy is right. Or if I say something today where you go, is he full of it? I'm going to have you step back again. What was the basis of that feeling? Why was it what it said? What was it about the data that caused that response? Is it about something that you've learned as a kid? Is it something that we learn organizationally and environmentally as cops? Or is it something we've just held on to? Or is it something new coming out of the emerging research? Challenge yourself. Take a look at the information. Challenge yourself on your viewpoints. What are my beliefs, and what's supported by facts and data now? Okay? Listen, thank you so very much, and thank you. I know you guys have busy schedules. Thank you for taking the time and listening to a dusty old cop chat. These are important issues. Okay, we've got a beautiful state. Please keep up the good work on both sides of this, all right? God bless you all. Thank you. You guys want to do Q&A? We've got Q&A.
So we do have some time for some Q&A if there's any media questions that you have for Dale.
Sir, all the way in the back.
What have you seen as far as change in black market use in Colorado over the time of both medical as well as commercial?
Changes in the black market. I can tell you right now, we do not have a problem with the black market in Colorado. They are alive and well and doing just fine. Legalization allowed them to hide in plain sight. I come in, I find a Dave Kelly, I use him as a straw man to set up a corporation. I pay him, he goes away, and then we take care of business over here. Or we come in, we buy your house, or lease your house, even worse. And I say, okay, we want it for a year. Okay, each month, how about we pay you in advance for the entire year and you don't come by? Well, what you're gonna come back to is a house full of mold, okay? We have people moving in from out of state as far away as from Florida, setting up grow operations so that they know what the process is. We got people coming from out of state to work in the dispensaries, work in the grow houses lawfully, so they understand the process, so that when their state legalizes for medical and eventually for commercial adult use, they know how to do it. It's alive and well, and I'm sad to say that, but unfortunately, it's alive and well. Another failure for law enforcement. Sorry, guys. Good question, sir.
Just two questions, follow up on that. The black market, are you finding in the different states, especially Colorado, that black market has excelled because of the fact that it's not taxed?
I can't speak to every state, but I can tell you here's the choice. I can go to Dave's dispensary and I can buy my couple ounces and pay 30% tax. I can go to you behind the car in the back alley and there is no tax. So there's two diversions there. One, product manufactured in Colorado is being diverted out of state. Two, we're missing out on the tax money. Okay?
And my second question is just the way it works in Colorado. You talked about 2-ounce limit when you purchase.
Right.
When you purchase as a not under medical marijuana.
Adult use.
So when you go to a dispensary in Colorado, do you have to show an ID or anything?
Proof of age.
Proof of age. So what stops the leaf? There's so many. If there are so many dispensaries around, can they just go from one dispensary to the next, getting two?
Oh, it's a highly regulated market, sir. That's exactly what they do. They call them loopers.
So there's no, when they say 2 ounce, the limit doesn't really matter.
No, this is why the diversion of products purchased in Colorado is making its way into Nebraska, making its way to Kansas. Missouri just legalized. Like I said, the market in Colorado right now, they're concerned. They're seeing part of the reason it's gone down. So many of these other states are legalizing, then I don't have to drive to Colorado. If I'm in Kansas City, I just need to go over to Missouri side and take care of it there. So the loopers can come in, they can do these purchases. As long as you got cash, you're walking in and walking out. And nothing you can do about it. It's sad.
It's just like a supermarket, when they limit 2 bottles of soda for sale.
Exactly.
You can just go to another one, so.
Anything else? Going once? Going twice? God bless you guys. Take care.
So just in closing real quick, I do want to thank the New Hampshire Drug-Free Community Coalitions. We are around the state. If you don't know who your coalition is, reach out and find them. This has been I've been in the prevention field for about 30 years, and to see our coalitions coming together the way it did for this event was absolutely amazing. If you're not a member of your coalition, please reach out and become one. We need boots on the ground. We need your expertise. We need to be able to bring in speakers like this and bring all of you together. So thank you very much on behalf of the Drug-Free Community Coalitions, and till next time. Oh, my eggs.
Your eggs.
Absolutely. Go ahead. You can do that before I do my eggs.
For those of you who don't know me, I am Representative Tim Cahill. And I'm just going to add that we definitely need boots on the ground, and we need you showing up at the State House. At our last bills, we had 6 people show up and hold signs, and I was very grateful for that. We need that number to be 60. Other causes show up in force, and they have an impact on their legislators. You need to be impacting your legislators and emailing them and calling them and showing up. And you need to let our governor see that happening. So you have to be showing up to these events, and especially when some of these bills are going to be going before the Senate. You need to go testify. No one is showing up to testify that believes what we believe, and you need to show up.
What's the next bill? What's the next testimony?
You know what? I don't know. Lily, do you know when that bill is 639 is going before the Senate? Anybody?
I think it's next week.
I'll tell you what. This coalition, the group coalition, is going to send it out.
Get it out to you.
And you need to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
So one last thing. Dale sort of queued this up a little bit when we were talking about edibles. So at your table, you're probably wondering why is there a bowl or just loose Easter eggs around. If you could all wouldn't mind just taking one and opening it up. If you ate them all, well, we have to have a conversation. So inside you'll either have gummy bears, or you'll have peanut M&Ms.
Not from Colorado, not from Colorado.
Hey, I want the peanuts.
So the idea behind this little exercise was, and I tried to get people talking at their tables about this. If you were going to eat them right now, would you eat just one? No. If you got the gummy bears, how many got gummy bears? Just the head is all you're supposed to bite off. If little kids, if even adults that don't know, I'm sorry, I am going to put down a lot of gummy bears. That's going to be not a good thing for me. It's certainly not a big thing for our kids who unfortunately see candy and they think it's candy. So that's the other really big thing we have to be thinking about is how is it being enticing our teenagers, enticing our little kids. They don't, actually, a lot of them probably don't even know that it's in there until it's too late. I did a tabling event a week or so ago, and I had an elder person come up to my table, and we were talking, and she's like, yeah, one of my friends gave me an edible, and I couldn't feel my feet anymore. She goes, it scared me. She goes, I'm never doing it again. But imagine the other medications she might have been on. We don't even know how the THC interacts with other medications that people are taking. So that was the exercise. It's nothing too sparkly or too whatever, but just to give you an idea, when we're seeing those increases in poisonings, that's why. We're not locking it up. There's no legislation or laws or policies that say you have to lock it up. It's suggested. So much like opioids, this is something that's going to be in our homes and in our communities, and we need to do more about it. So thank you.
Excellent.
Does anybody, any of the other DFCs want to say anything?
I just want to say, I want to thank Dennis Garnham. He's with our Raymond Coalition for Youth and Raymond Community TV. He's recording this event, and we're going to share out the link if you enjoyed what you saw today and you want to share it with somebody else. So if you learned something, we will have the link for that so you can pass that information on in video form also. So thank you.
And please take any of the paperwork on the table. Some folks took the time to look at this. This is how they're also packaging just things that we like to eat. Again, leave my M&Ms alone. Leave my Oreos alone. Leave my Doritos alone. But this is what it looks like. And it's really, unless you're really looking tough, you're not going to see it.
I have a question.
Is there any reason why this presentation can't be shown in front of the whole legislative chamber?
They were all invited today.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in the State House, not here. I mean, you only got to get certain people to come to this.
Yeah.
I'm talking about an audience.
We'll bring the show to you if we can get the audience in a space
I'm talking
there.
about a captive audience. You know?
So to that point, Representative Cahill, he has been a huge help to our organization, letting us know how we can access people and share this information, so we're very grateful. He told us about this space here today. He's told us that we can put things in the legislative mailboxes. Some of these things we didn't know as prevention people, where we can go and how we can get this information to people. And we can invite all of you to come, but not necessarily everybody comes all the time. So a captive audience would be a great thing if you can share with us.
Yeah,
and we
absolutely.
can get Dale to come back. I already have an event I want to bring him back to in October.
That's the fall.
Sorry, follow up?
This is important information. I mean, I learned a lot today. More people learn this that have a different outlook on legalizing.
Yeah, and to that point, everyone here are now blessed as ambassadors. Take the information and the knowledge that you have, share it, connect it with the coalitions. We can get the information back out to you. That's how this all works, is us communicating together and getting people who weren't able or unable to get here today the information they need.
That's definitely our biggest challenge. As prevention people, we have a little tiny bits of money. Some of us are volunteer organizations and don't have any money. And the marijuana industry has boatloads of money to come into our state. They have lobbyists. We get in trouble if we lobby. We can only provide information. So we encourage you to get involved. And I appreciate you spending your time with us this morning.
Thank you all.
Thank you.